The 2023 NFL season is 4 weeks in, and there have been some very big surprises so far. I don't think anybody saw the Texans playing this well this early in the rebuild, and by the way, congratulations to them as it's been a long few years. And on the opposite side of this, I think a lot of people would have been surprised that the Bengals are 1-3 through 4 games and have looked as bad as they have at times through the first month. And in today's video, we're going to discuss some of the biggest realities of the 2023 NFL season. There will be a few good situations discussed in today's video and a few not so good situations discussed in today's video, and like always, we will break down the team's current situation, the long-term outlook, what they realistically can do this year, and everything in between. And this is a video I'm excited to dive into, and with these prefaces out of the way, let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers are off to a 4-0 start and will play the Cowboys in Week 5 on Sunday night, which will probably be one of the best games all year. But the reality or the truth with this team is they are an absolute wagon, and if I had to pick a team from the NFC to go to the Super Bowl today, it would be San Francisco. And I think this team is dominating to the point where it's almost expected, and people, I don't want to say discredit because that's a strong word in itself, but people kind of get used to the 49ers being good and are thinking, okay, yep, they're good, and we'll see just how good they are in January. But this team has put up over 30 points in all 4 games, and the games they're playing are not close, hard-fought wins. They are a Rams field goal as time expired away from having 4 double-digit wins to start the year, and that was the closest game we've seen them play so far. The other 3 wins for this team have been by 3 scores, and through 4 games, they've committed just 1 turnover offensively, compared to forcing 5 turnovers defensively, for a turnover margin of +4 through 4 games. And what I was paying attention to in particular from this team early on was just how they would perform in the first month of the year, because this team usually starts slow, or at least slower than most Super Bowl contending teams. And because of this, I didn't think it was unreasonable for Pittsburgh to stun them in Week 1 due to that, and given West Coast teams typically do not play great on the East Coast. But San Francisco jumped out to a 20-0 lead in the first quarter and a half of that game, and since then you could say the rest is history. There's always a lot of conversation around Brock Purdy and whether or not he is the guy, because a lot of people think he isn't all that good and that he's carried by one of the best teams in all of football, which is a different discussion. But what I will say is running back Christian McCaffrey deserves some MVP talk through the first 4 games, because through these first 4 games, guys, brace yourself, CMC is on pace for a 2,500 total yard season along with 30 total touchdowns, and no, that's not an exaggeration. Sure, the 4 touchdown game against Arizona in Week 4 will spike those on-pace touchdown numbers, but this offense is the definition of a well-oiled machine. They have no weaknesses, and what I think is particularly crazy about this 49ers offense is they have one of the best tight ends in football in George Kittle, and for the most part, choose not to use him in the passing game simply because they don't have to. They haven't been in situations where they need to rely on Kittle to make play after play after play. The only thing I remotely worry about with this team is health, because they have been that dominant through the first 4 weeks. And it's not an exaggeration to say if they can keep this pace, this could be a historic team. The 49ers are an absolute unit. Next up is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think this is a lot rougher of a situation than people may realize. Yes, they're 2-2 through 4 games, but I don't have any confidence in this team moving forward, and that was before quarterback Kenny Pickett's injury. I think there is a lot wrong with this team, and it's scary considering they were supposed to take the next step this year in Kenny's second season. Obviously, not all of this is on Pickett, as Steelers fans understandably dislike offensive coordinator Matt Canada, and I get it. I understand where they're coming from. But through 4 games, they're 25th in points per game, 29th in yards offensively, 29th in rushing yards, and have 0 rushing touchdowns. And why I am so concerned with this team specifically is you can certainly make an argument they could be 0-4. I get it, you can do this with a lot of teams, but we're talking about a team who needed not 1, but 2 defensive touchdowns to beat the Browns in their own stadium, and a team that needed Josh McDaniels to practically hand them the game and outright give the Raiders 0 chance of coming back at the end of Week 3. The Steelers have one game this year with over 260 yards of total offense, which came against the Raiders, and ultimately a team that will probably be selecting in the top 6 or 7 picks of next year's draft, and they only have 53 first downs in 4 games. And guys, a win is a win in the NFL, but that Browns game was the definition of Cleveland beating themselves more so than Pittsburgh beating Cleveland. The Browns outgained them by 150 yards, they ran for nearly 200 yards, and they held Pittsburgh to just 55 yards on the ground all night. It's very rare when you get 2 defensive touchdowns in one game, and even though that happened, the Steelers nearly lost. And why I am worried about this team's future is it's not like they don't have guys. This isn't a bad roster where they're rebuilding and they're expected to lose 10 or 11 games this year. I don't know how many games you have to see Matt Canada waste this team's offensive talent before letting him go, because remember, that was a major concern heading into the season. This isn't a problem that's came up in the first 4 games of the 2023 season. Everyone knew this heading into the year, including Mike Tomlin. And speaking of Mike Tomlin, I mentioned this in the weekly recaps, but I truly think his seat is getting warm, not scorching hot of course, but I think it is getting a little warm. This team hasn't won a playoff game since the 2016 season, meaning franchise cornerstone TJ Watt is in his 7th season and has never won a playoff game. That's how long it's been since the Steelers last won their last playoff game, and if you ask me right now if I think they're going to win one this year, the answer would be a hard no, and I don't think they're even going to get to the playoffs. This team is not playing good football offensively, and they're not playing great defensively either, as they rank 29th in yards allowed through 4 games, and teams are running the ball down their throats as they've allowed 135 yards or more rushing in 3 of the first 4 games, with 2 of those being over 185 yards. This wasn't supposed to be a Super Bowl year for the Steelers, as it was supposed to be a stepping stone, but they haven't taken a step forward in any direction, aside from TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith each playing good football. They won the Browns game without taking a snap inside Cleveland's 25-yard line. A win is a win, but that's not a recipe for consistent winning football. And the Steelers' future concerns me because I have no idea what's next for them. Up by 79 to discuss the Buffalo Bills, and the last few weeks for the Bills have been nothing short of highlight reel after highlight reel. Every team every season usually has at least one stinker of a performance, and for Buffalo, that stinker may have been in week 1 against the Jets as they committed 4 turnovers offensively and allowed 172 yards rushing to the Jets. But since then, they've outscored their opponents with a score of 123-33, including a 4-touchdown win over the big bad Miami Dolphins. Josh Allen is playing at an MVP level right now, and in the past 3 games, he's thrown for over 800 yards and 8 touchdowns to just 1 interception, which would put him on pace for a 4,600-yard, 45 passing touchdown season, along with 11 rushing touchdowns. And the only concern I have moving forward with the Bills, aside from health of course, is are they peaking too early? That's the only concern, because the past 3 weeks have been an absolute clinic offensively, and the lowest amount of points they've scored in this span is 37, which was against the Commanders on the road. This game against the Dolphins in week 4 was some of the best football you'll see from a quarterback, as Josh was perfect under pressure as he was 6 of 6 for 93 yards with a touchdown, and even when Miami sent blitzes, he was 9 of 9 for 126 yards and a touchdown. The only thing stopping people from buying in with this team, and this happens because that's how people remember teams and the stigma around their seasons, but because their last 3 games have been played at 1 o'clock versus the week 1 Monday night game everyone was amped to see in Josh versus Aaron, and when your team isn't playing on primetime for everyone to see, or at least hasn't yet outside of 1 game, that's how they're going to be remembered for a few weeks. But if you were not convinced with the Bills prior to the game against the Dolphins, you should be now, because they're playing excellent football. Stephon Diggs has quietly started the year with 3 100-yard games in the first 4, and as cliche as this sounds, big-time players step up in big-time games, and Diggs had 3 touchdowns against the Dolphins in a game that could play a huge part in how the AFC shakes out later this year. But it's not just their offense. The defense has forced 11 turnovers in 4 games, and the Week 3 game against Washington was schoolyard bully, take your lunch money level of how bad Buffalo beat down Washington. They forced them into 5 turnovers, they sacked Sam Howell 9 times, they held them to 1 of 9 on 3rd down, and even offensively, they ran for 168 yards and 2 touchdowns and controlled this game from the start. There were so many things that happened to the Bills in 2022 that they kind of entered the 2023 season under the radar with everything going on entering this year, like the Chiefs defending their title, or the Bengals getting to their 3rd straight AFC Championship game, or Aaron Rodgers and the Jets making a potential Super Bowl run. Everyone kind of forgot about Buffalo, but 4 weeks in, they look to be the favorite in the AFC, and if I had to pick an AFC team right now to go to the Super Bowl, it would be the folks that enjoy blue cheese in Western New York. Next up is the Bengals, whose situation, to put it bluntly, is bad. They're 1-3 through 4 games, but they're not just 1-3. They have the lowest scoring offense in the NFL, as they've mustered just 49 points in 4 games. They have just 2 passing touchdowns on the year and are 29th in passing yards, with just 664 in 4 games. They have 1 game with 300 yards or more of offense, and there's a lot wrong with this team right now. And I think a big thing with the Bengals over the past few years was the offense's ability to mask Zach Taylor's deficiencies as a play caller, and they did a good job of that in 2021 and 2022, as Joe Burrow would go on to throw a combined 69 nice passing touchdowns in those 2 years. Their offense was predicated on being able to take the deep shot, and with the Bengals' offensive line not being good, they relied on Joe Burrow to be mobile enough to still keep his eyes downfield and to throw it up to Jamar or T when the time came. That wasn't their only offense, of course, but if they needed a big play, that was what it boiled down to. And obviously when you throw the ball further downfield, your completion percentage is going to drop, as it's harder to hit a target 40 yards away versus 6 yards away, and that is to be expected. But to give you an idea of how different the 2023 Bengals are versus the 21 and 22 Bengals, the numbers are drastic. Joe Burrow is just 1 of 10 on passes thrown 20 plus yards down the field in 23 versus being 25 of 64 in 22 with 10 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. And what's frustrating with the Bengals offense this year is it's not like Jamar Chase isn't a good player. And even Chase has expressed his frustration with the offense, and you can't blame him because through 4 games he hasn't been the problem. What's frustrating about this offense is if you know Joe Burrow isn't 100%, which we all do by the way, this isn't something only the Bengals know, make his job easier. Throw slants, digs, whip routes, anything to get the ball out quick and get him in a rhythm and build the confidence back. There's no reason for Joe Burrow to be completing just 57.6% of his passes through 4 games when you, as an offensive play caller, can make his job easier. And the comment of his completion percentage being so low is referring to play calling than on Burrow himself. But Joe hasn't been Joe either, and 1-3 hasn't happened by accident. And this may be a hot take, but I truly think the Bengals should shut him down for the next 2 weeks, and hopefully they beat the Cardinals and enter the bye at 2-4. Because the football they're playing right now with the Joe Burrow they have right now is not going to win them multiple playoff games if they even get there at all. This truly is the Bengals' last chance before it's too late, with Joe Burrow that is. Sit him for the next 2 weeks and let him play coming out of the bye, because this situation is very ugly at the moment with no sign of it getting better. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 24% of people watching are subscribed, and it makes a big difference. We're closing in on 100K, and I truly cannot thank you guys enough for the support, and until next time, please be safe, and have a great day. Love you guys.